Sounds promising.
Okay, and you guys, I'll turn this towards you a little bit so you can see. So we can see you guys on a laptop. Okay, it is 12:35, calling to order meeting of the Finance Committee of Woodstock, January 8th. We have a quorum. Tom is ill and sends his regrets. The agenda is, and I'm sorry, we can't project here. So the agenda, the documents that we're going to discuss are posted on the Finance Committee website. The agenda is any addition to the agenda, approval of the minutes of the last two meetings, which are posted, citizen comments, and then a discussion of the water company, basically the role that we might play in the water company analysis and financial advice. If time permits, we would also discuss our other initiatives and any discussion about how those are going to proceed and so forth for 2024. But urgency in terms of time sensitivity is directing us to this specific initiative, which was on our list. It's just the most time sensitive at the moment. So are there any additions or deletions to the agenda besides, well, actually both of those items were on the agenda that was published. Are there any addition or deletions? Okay, hearing none. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes from the last two meetings, the December 7th and I think the 18th? It's listed on the agenda. I'm sorry, I was going to pull it down. Tom, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Can you approve minutes of the meeting?
Yes, you can. Well, I don't believe there's a rule against it, but if you were not in the meeting, you could abstain. I think we still have a quorum.
I'll second.
Second by Alan. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Kareem, we have to have unanimity when it's a hybrid meeting, or which is okay, or we have to go around and okay, you're okay. Just let the recording indicate that Kareem is saying yes. I don't have any more food, but okay. Citizen comments. As our typical, during our discussion, we allow citizen comments. I can't see if there are people who are not on video. But if your comment is on anything that's not on the agenda, we would take it now. Otherwise, you're welcome to make comments before. Do we have several citizens here? Are you? Any comments? Okay. Anyone online? I can't see. All right. Well, hearing none. Okay. Any comments? Yep. All right. Moving to our role in the water company. Charlie Kimball, who headed up the water working group, and Stuart Matthews is on the phone, who also helped to work on that, are going to comment, I hope. I know Charlie is going to make some comments. And Charlie, can I just introduce the issue from a finance committee perspective?
Sure.
And I'll give you a chance to correct the record and then help us make a decision about what role we should play. I think everyone knows that the water team, water working group, whatever it's called, has done a very good job of analyzing the situation with the water company. And they have made a recommendation. They have built a financial model of what would happen. They have analyzed whether or not it is more attractive to the town to not buy or not buy the aqueduct company. They have built a financial model looking at the financial implications of buying the aqueduct company and providing a couple of options for how the water company might set its prices under public ownership. That sort of begins to address the question, how would people who are customers or users of the water company be affected by an acquisition? Because the prices will have to change no matter who owns it. They have done a comprehensive job and they are making a recommendation to the select board, I believe this is correct, that Woodstock should buy the company, that's better for Woodstock. I think they've done an excellent job. I don't think in making that in analyzing the situation and then coming to the conclusion, I don't think that the finance committee, because of the nature of their analysis and the conclusions that it yielded, I personally don't think the finance committee can add any value to their analysis. It is unambiguously clear, in my opinion, that the only difference between the town owning it, that there are no advantages to the town owning it, literally none, and there are significant both financial and strategic benefits of the town owning it. So I don't think we add.
Repeat that again, 'cause you used town.
Sorry,
You said that.
did I contradict myself?
Yeah.
There are no benefits to the town of letting a private owner own it. There are clear benefits to the town, both financial and strategic, and they are very simple to describe, and the water company has described them, that suggest that the town should buy the water company. So I don't think the finance they've done a financial analysis. We could examine it, we could replicate it. It's not even on the borderline. And Charlie can explain why, if that's of interest to us. In terms of our role, I think we should be focused on the next issue, which is that once the town decides to buy the water company, there's probably a period of time in which they have to do due diligence. The deal might not go through, but it was, that we would approve the debt so that we could make the acquisition. There's going to be a period of analysis of exactly how to set prices and so forth. And during that period, which I think starts now, but Charlie, I think, and maybe some others disagree, there's going to be a discussion in the community of how should the rates be set. And what that means is who should pay. How should we raise the rates to pay for the acquisition and the repairs that need to be made? We're going to pay for them whether we buy the company or someone else does, because the repairs will be made. Because the alternative to that is there will be no water. The state is not letting us operate, and so and we won't be anyway. They can explain why. But there's going to be a question as to which segments of the customers of the water company will pay for the increase. Is it the fire hydrant customer, for which most of the repairs are being done for their benefit? But that cost is shared by everyone in the town. Is it people like me or residents who pay the water company for my water? Is it the lodging properties and the hotels? Is it the businesses? Is it the government buildings that also, all of those people are customers? And that, I think, is going to be a question, just like it was with the sewer plant and so forth. And that discussion was made. So
It hasn't been made.
sorry, in the South Woodstock, the first, that hasn't been made yet either.
The South Woodstock was paid out of capital reserve,
Okay,
but
so
there's been no determination of how the sewer usage fee should.
fine. So I think that then the issue, we know that is the type of issue that is important to the town and needs to be addressed, and it's going to be important to the town here as well. The parallels with this and the sewer issue are quite obvious. So I think our role should be to help the select board and the municipal manager study and model the alternatives for different pricing. I'm not even sure we should be making a recommendation as to what we think is best. That to me is, there's not really a right answer to this, who should pay. But I think that our role should be to provide a tool which allows the decision makers to understand that if they say that the fire hydrant people are going to pay more, this is what it means for taxes for different groups. And if the residents are going to pay whatever, that we provide that tool. And Charlie's, and I'll turn it now over to Charlie. If that is the role we want to play, we have a model that's either ready. I don't want to share it right now. I don't want to share it with the select board tonight, but we could deliver that model within a couple of days. It's working now. It's been built off of the model that the Water Working Group does. We could start to use it with the select board. We could run through scenarios ourselves. We could show it to them. We could say, are you interested in this? Do you have other scenarios you'd like us to test? And we could produce results, or we could wait, or do something else.
Can I add two things?
Sure, quickly, but then I want to give Charlie a chance to kind of
Okay.
explain. Go ahead.
So how about the finance committee's role being, can we take on $10 million of debt to do this work?
Yeah.
yes or no? Do we have a model? Do we have recommendations?
Yes, well, they've already done that work, and the answer to the question is yes, we can easily.
So I think the finance committee should support that.
Yeah, no, I guess my point is that, correct, so what you're really saying is we could review the recommendation to purchase.
No, I think that as a municipal organization, we need to say that town can afford to take on a 10 million, has the capacity to take on a $10 million debt.
Yes, correct. They've made a recommendation. They have just, correct. We could opine on that. I don't think that will take a lot of our time.
And then I just want to put these two lines at rest. If you read the document in detail, the worst case scenario is if the users pay for everything with no grants coming from anywhere. And that means that water fees are double. That's the worst case scenario. And I think I just want to set that, because numbers like 10 million are scary, but adding $600 to my water bill is not so scary.
The average resident pays $304.
I have a comment.
All right, so let me just give Charlie a chance to.
Okay.
Is that all right? We'll have.
Go ahead.
Questions. This is really just a process. I mean, not just, this is a process discussion today. So as to what we want our role to be. So Charlie, do you want to sort of make whatever introduction and comments you think is relevant?
Sure. First, I want to absolve all the other members of the working group because we did not come back together and review this model. So after we met last month, in which the finance committee really wanted to have a workable model to play with different scenarios, then I set out to work with others to figure out how to present that to you. So that's the financial model that I worked into a spreadsheet and had a few folks look at it to provide input. So you will see that there are a couple of things. It was just trying to really use what Harvard Business School had already done and try to make it so that model could work for us, but found that it was really difficult because the Harvard Business School model did not take into account really the four main sources of revenue. That is a base fee that is charged to all water users, and that is actually per unit. And that was not clear until between the time that we last met in December and now. A consumption fee for over a certain amount per quarter, the hydrant fee for the 96 hydrants, of which the town pays for 82 of them, and then also a capacity fee. So those are really the four streams. The Harvard business model didn't account for that. It also didn't account for any potential grants that could be received by the town. So we were trying to provide a tool for the town to use to say, okay, well, what if we did this with the base fees? And what if we did this with the consumption fees and this with the hydrant fees? So to give you some ability to look at that. And the hydrant fees really could be looked at as a subsidy from the town instead of a real hydrant fee, because that's in other communities, it's not a hydrant fee so much as just support from the town. So that's what the model was we tried to figure. Our committee stopped short of trying to redesign the rate structure because of a couple things. One is that we weren't sure the data that we had was 100% accurate. So we looked at the data for illustrative purposes to show here are the users across the categories. And it looks like that didn't match up between the number of customers, the usage, and the fees paid. So we stopped short of trying to recommend a different rate structure because there's a lot of process that goes into it. We didn't think that we could look at, for instance, what's called an increasing block rate, in which you charge users for the more water that they use, which would encourage conservation. Right now, Woodstock has a uniform rate, which all users pay the same exact consumption rate when it's over that minimum per quarter. So the Woodstock Inn pays the same as Kareem pays. So that's, we didn't try to change all that because there's a lot of process that goes into that, a public process. What do you want to accomplish with the water rates, that kind of stuff. So that's why we didn't do that. So the model that John has developed, the simulator, goes further than where our model stopped. And that is to try to give you the ability, or the town the ability, to calculate by customer segment. So anyway, so we did not do that, and that's something that you have to consider, but it is our recommendation that a thorough review of the rate structure happen, but not between now and tonight. The other issue that is really important to note, and it's in our recommendation to the select board, is that the Woodstock Aqueduct Company is preparing their application for the rate increase, which would pass about $500,000 in expense to the town. If approved, then that automatically transfers that to all town taxpayers without the town getting to weigh in on it. So, and it's a matter of control, as we had discussed before, for the town to control what those rates are instead of being in the hands of a private water company. But anyway, so that's when I was discussing this with John this morning about the different rate structures and that kind of thing. It's important that a process happen to identify each user, where do they fall in that category? Are they commercial, are they hospitality, are they residential, whatever it is, and define those categories if you want to charge different categories, different rates. So that was what I wanted to share with you, is that there is opportunities to look at what the impact is of those grants. And also one last thing, and I'll give it up, is that we don't know 100% that the requirements of the state could be satisfied sufficiently from the first two projects that are engaged by the town. It could be sufficient for those first two projects and not have to go beyond that to go locate a water tank. So I think what you're looking at with this expenditure is, I don't want to say it's a worst case scenario, but it is assuming you have to do everything. And that may not be the case, and we won't know until those systems are put in place. All right.
Right, so I think Kareem and then Ellen had questions or comments.
Yeah, okay, thanks, John. Hi, everyone. Sorry I couldn't make it there in person because I'm hopping on another call. It's 2 minutes long. So my first is something I brought up before, John, and it looks like there's been some review of the model that the working group has worked on, meaning more than one person has looked at it and pretty confident with the accuracy of the Excel spreadsheet. You're nodding your head, Charlie. As far as the model of the finance committee, it looks like it's the model of the working group with additional layers of sensitivity analysis, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Within 1%, yes. And it can be made, it's going to be made identical.
Okay. And is that a model that you built, John?
Yes.
Okay. Did another set of, not that I don't trust you, I'm sure it's accurate, but just from a due diligence point of view, I recommend that at least another set of couple eyes just look at it to make sure everything is accurate. Do some random checks on the formulas, etc.
Another set of eyes has looked at it, but I agree with you that we should continuously be doing those checks.
Okay, great. So as long as, okay, great. Again, it's not because I don't trust you, it's because one person can make a mistake, right?
I do those checks all the time, and other people should do them as well. And in fact, when I did that with one other person, they found things that needed to be fixed.
Great. Okay, great. Thank you. The other question,
by the way, and Charlie has done the same thing with what I'm going to call the foundational, the model that he described.
Yep. The other question that I have is, actually I have two of them. One is, I know we've been talking about sort of new categories of customer segments, and I'm not clear, and maybe I missed it, and if I did, I apologize. I'm not clear what's the rationale behind having new customer segments, as opposed to, the same rate per user. Because I'm assuming if there's new customer segments, that means there's going to be different rates, right? So that's one. And two, the cost associated with the transfer to the town would include the purchase cost plus projected repairs and upgrades, let's say over the next 5 years, maybe it's 10 years, I just don't remember. And I'm assuming those would include things that are required for us to do, include, safety issues such as hydrants, and also potentially, because we all know that the pipes, some of them are falling apart, that we would include that too, right? Hopefully.
Correct.
So these are the two questions that I had.
Yeah.
From,
That's right.
from the perspective of the budget for repairs, built into the model is $50,000 per year for repairs, which in some years is too much, some years is too little.
Okay.
And that then increases every year in the model. The second question, or the first question about why break down customers by use, and it's I wouldn't say it's a matter of best practice, but very common among different water utilities to charge residential customers less than they charge other customers, which might have a mixed use or might qualify for some other thing, whether it's agriculture or commercial. That's why it's important to kind of go through that process and have that open discussion. What do you really want to accomplish? So we had talked about, do you want to provide a really low rate to attract a brewery? Is that something you want to do? Well, maybe, maybe not. So it's one of those things as a policy question is, what are you trying to accomplish through the setting of rates? Passing those on to business, is that something? Don't know. Or is it to make it so it's most affordable for residences?
Okay, so yeah, I guess because it looks like it's the best practice elsewhere, I think we need to take the extra step to explain why it's the best practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, as I mentioned, we also have to be careful to sort of sub-segment, because even though I fall in the category of hospitality, I'm much closer to a personal residence, a large personal residence in town than to Stock Inn, for example.
Ellen?
Well, what I have to say sort of touches on what they were just talking about. So we have there's a certain project planning sheet where we have the projects. But I did notice that the ongoing pipe upgrades, it has a value of 0. So that really concerns me. I understand they have 50,000 a year for repairs, but 2/3 of all of the pipes are 100 years plus old. So if you just look at the ductile iron, okay. If you take the totality of it and you subtract what we're now going to replace, and you multiply it by how much it is to replace it, a foot of it, I'm coming up with really large numbers.
Right.
15 million, 23 million.
Right.
So how are we going to deal with that? The number in here is 0.
Right. So two responses to that lead us, I hope, back to the process question.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, the immediate answer is that the model doesn't have 0 in it. That's not the model. That was the document printed before, and the model has been updated since I talked to Charlie this morning.
I wasn't aware of that.
No, I understand.
What's in it now?
What's in it now is 50,000
A year.
a year. But what is also in it now is the ability to change that and to see what the implication is, which brings us sort of back towards what tools should we be building. Right now, let me just say, to build on what you and Karima both said, if either Charlie or I showed you either of these models, again, the second model is really an enhancement of the first one. It isn't different. You would have way more questions than you have now. You've come up with 2 good questions without even looking at the model, because there are a lot of questions. The water group did a great job, and they supported by HBS. But the model isn't perfect or complete. It never will be, but it clearly has more work to do, including in the areas that Charlie described, and in the areas that you described, and in the areas that Kareem asked for. We are, by the end of this, going to have to make, the town is going to have to make 2 financial decisions, hence financial decisions, because we're the finance committee. One is, should we buy the aqueduct company? And then the second decision, if we decide not to, we don't have to make the second decision. If we do decide to, we're going to have to decide how to set rates and so forth. And that will take a fair bit of time. There's some appetite here from Kareem and Jill, and I think sort of implicitly from you as well, that we should look at the financial information to inform the first decision. Why should we buy the water company or not? A financial model naturally fits into that. And and especially Charlie, given that the water group that you built the model sort of at our request and that the water group hasn't yet done it, I think it is incumbent on us to do what Jill suggested and what you're implying and Kareem is implying, which is let's take a look at that model. And by the way, the model, well, yeah, let's take a look at the model. And I think there's some additional, anyway, let's take a look at the information that they have and vet and test the judgment, the financial judgment that they made, that it is financially more attractive to purchase the company than it is to let a private owner own it. Asking the group to not look at that seems irresponsible. Having looked at it, there is an ironclad argument. And just so we think about how we allocate our time. I don't mean at this meeting, but in the next few weeks or the next couple of meetings.
Whoa.
Yeah.
We don't have very long.
Well, fine. In the next day.
Until January the 18th.
Fine. Tonight. I mean, well, let me lay out, and Charlie, correct me. Let me lay out the reasons why it's better. And you'll notice in these reasons that they don't require a financial model. And here's why. If you assume that what a private investor would do would be in terms of repairing the pipes, like if a pipe is leaking, there was a leak the other day, it was 85 gallons a minute, I think, down on right. The water company decided to repair that pipe because my understanding is that the reservoir kind of went down to 9 feet. It's usually at 30 feet. I think a private company would repair that same pipe. In other words, the capital expenditures, the main things here are going to be the same, largely because the state is requiring us to make some. We may not have to make all of them, as Charlie said. But whatever ones we would make, the private owner would make and vice versa. If we don't make that assumption, then the decision as to whether to buy the water company requires some other analysis. But if we make that assumption, which I consider to be eminent, really the only assumption we can make, then there are two structural factors that will raise prices if a private owner owns it, that will not happen if we own it, and everything else is the same. The first is that they will have to borrow. Their cost of debt will be higher than our cost of debt. We know that for a fact. It's not an estimate. I mean, we can estimate how much it is, but we know it is materially higher. And a significant portion of the cost of running this company over the next 20 years, well, over the next 25 years, 30 years, is debt repayment. So we know that that cost is going to be higher. And we know that Woodstock in total is going to pay it. The alternative being we don't have a water company. The second thing is that the state has indicated pretty clearly, and Charlie, if I'm overstepping, you'll tell me, that it is reasonable from their perspective to allow a private investor to earn a 9% after-tax return on their equity investment. The town, unless Eric has some grand visions of buying the corporate jet for Woodstock, is not planning on earning a 9% return on the town's investment. In fact, the town actually won't be making any equity investment, none, because it will all be funded with debt that will be paid for by the users, one way or the other. Which users is an open question. So from a financial point of view, and the team has built that model to estimate how much higher we would pay, but there's no scenario in which they can estimate that the cost to the users, to Woodstock, whether it's the town of Woodstock or me as a resident or the fire, whoever it is, there's no scenario that they can build that shows that it would be the same or lower cost to us. It's only higher cost.
There's a third reason, John, which is access to grants as well.
Oh, sorry, absolutely, very important. There are grants that we believe that we have access to. There are no grants that we know of that private owners can access to that we cannot. And there may be some grants that we can access that they cannot. Is that right, Charlie, or that may not be right?
Sometimes, like the Woodstock Aqueduct Company did successfully apply for a grant for repairs, but they were not eligible for a lot of FEMA money, a lot of other state and federal money applications. So
And we
there's-
would have, and we would have been eligible for that same grant had we owned it. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yes, yeah.
So can I
Let
suggest?
me just finish. The last item is from a strategic point of view. This is not financial, but since the amount of money that needs to be increased is about $500,000 a year, order of magnitude. That's to pay for the repairs that are going to get done and that we're going to pay for. If we own it, we can decide which segments pay for it and how much. If we don't own it, we can't. So there's no scenario, we can't identify any benefit. So we should look at the spreadsheet. It's irresponsible not to. But I believe that no matter what the spreadsheet shows, the first decision we have to make, which is, are we better off owning it or not owning it a year from now, which is how long it'll take. The answer is, there's really no argument for the other. That's my view as to how it's going to go. Go ahead, John.
So my suggestion was just to treat this as two separate decisions.
Correct.
And as a finance committee, do we feel ready to make a decision on, do we buy this one? Do we recommend that the water company is bought or not?
I think we should go through the financial model to confirm what I've just told you. And not at this meeting, but it's very soon.
So I disagree with that
Okay.
because there's a very large meeting tonight that will discuss this, and I think it would be good for the finance committee to either have a point of view or say we don't have a point of view because we haven't done enough work.
Fair enough. Is there, how do we feel about, based, if the conclusions that I've just said are correct, and I'm going to ask Charlie to confirm them or say where they're not correct. If those are the conclusions, are we comfortable coming to a decision? I mean, I am.
I am.
I am. I think, guys, this is conceptually very simple. I don't think we
Yep.
should spend a lot of time on the model. If you postulate that the repairs need to be done, number one. Number two, that no one has a cost advantage in making those repairs, then it all comes down to finance costs. And the evidence for the finance cost is clear and simple and complete and unambiguous.
And profit
We
margin.
have lower finance costs at Woodstock than anyone else.
And profit
Case
margin
closed.
also, which exacerbates it, right? Okay,
You'd just like to see the totality of what those repairs are gonna cost.
Yeah, but Ellen,
You know, I
it doesn't-
don't,
we're gonna pay for
there's
them.
no
matter
engineer, there's no engineering report.
there's,
There is an engineer.
yeah,
Well, I've read the engineering report and it just says, you know, that there should be ongoing pipe upgrades
well,
to the pipes that are not being addressed.
let's say that,
So how much is that gonna cost?
let's say 15 million additional.
It doesn't make a difference if it's 15 or 10 from the fact that based on the principles that were just laid out, it still makes more sense for the town than a private institution to own.
Well, I
And-
think Ellen is speaking from a different viewpoint because she's not a water user. And so as a water user, we can say the worst possible impact for a water user is that
No water.
if there is $10 million worth of debt, and we accept this, our water bills are likely to double. From a non-water user's point of view, which I think is yours,
Yes.
right? Ellen pays a contribution to fire hydrants at the moment and municipal buildings. If the user fees change, then she would be liable for that. But what
And I
the
wanna
point
know
I-
the
point I'd like to
totality
make
of what
is-
I'm
the
liable.
point I'd like to make is
Yeah.
that if a private company changes the fee structure for the fire hydrants or the buildings, you're still going to be liable.
I
So
understand.
there's, whether you know the information or not, perhaps you can
Right.
move to make a decision.
Well, yes, go ahead. Can you just come up to the podium, just only so the remote people can hear you?
Susan Fuller, non-water user. One of the, that I haven't really heard with this acquisition of it is, and maybe I haven't read everything, but what actually would we be purchasing? Are we purchasing the land with the reservoir and the pipes?
The
Or, I mean, the whole
that's
system?
that's to be negotiated. We're purchasing the entire water system.
Okay, because if we purchase the land and everything, that's currently being taxed by them, where that comes off the tax rolls, right? But then, okay, just that one adding into cost.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, if we do end up owning this as a town, we're gonna have to have a whole separate crew of people, of maintenance crew. I know it's built in, I know it's built into theirs that they already have, but wouldn't our town crews currently, or the waterways crews, be overburdened by it, and we would have to hire more people?
That's been analyzed,
It has been, that's, okay.
that has been analyzed, and Eric has, I think you have your stamp of approval on the approach and the costs of that approach to operate.
Is that information that analysts of those, is that available to us?
It's,
I would love to be able to see that. I mean, I can read
Sure.
numbers.
it's in the model that Charlie built that multiple people have looked at, but I don't know. Again,
Is Charlie's model available to the public?
Well, the
Yep.
Harvard Business School
Yeah,
work
sorry.
is available and it's part of that.
Just part of it, but the one that Charlie has done that is proposing, I mean, I think that would be really helpful for people who can understand numbers.
Yeah, Charlie, does the HBS study take into account the financial calculation, the assessment of the operating costs, including the staff costs that Susan is talking about?
Yeah, it makes a couple of assumptions in there. And the question that we really studied was whether or not the town could handle the management of the water company, given that amount of financials. And that conclusion was yes. But and so the Harvard Business School study did include that, but it also, we refined it because some of the costs we really dove into to prove what the insurance cost was, for instance, on an annual basis to the town. So far as Eric got a quote on all of the additional assets being purchased, and it would have to be insured additionally by the town. So that's, we dove into those things, some adjustment items on there as well. So that model, that information is available. I'm trying to think if the most recent model that the finance committee has that we developed, that is, I can make that public very easily.
That would be great, Charlie. Thank you.
Yeah.
I would appreciate
Yeah.
that.
I think no matter which model is released, it is going to be extremely non-trivial to draw conclusions from it without.
Yeah.
No, I understand, but the implication of it is not that we shouldn't release it, but that we shouldn't expect the release to answer questions. It will raise more questions than it answers, which means I think the finance committee has some obligation here to address. It's clear, I mean, there's only a few people here at the meeting, but this is not the first meeting at which people have asked the kinds of questions which go towards, have we studied properly the question of whether we should acquire it? Really, is the conclusion that the cost will definitely be higher if a private investor buys it? Is that conclusion valid? I'm suggesting that conclusion shouldn't be questioned. I can observe that it's being questioned.
I'm
I
not sure
don't
that's
know.
what Susan's questioning, are you?
Well, I mean, yes,
Yeah.
that's that I haven't seen the actual numbers, on his paper.
Correct, I understand. And so really, the issue we have in front of us, and Jill, you're getting at it with respect to the timing and so forth, is whether or not I don't know that we have to make a decision by the 18th. We could put something on a.
If anything that goes on, correct me if I'm wrong, but to put something on the ballot, the decision has to be made.
We can put something on the ballot. That doesn't mean the select board can stand up and say, we strongly oppose that. We should put this on the ballot.
Yeah.
And hopefully people will vote it down if they recommend not voting for it.
Yeah, if the select board decides to put something for town meeting, it'll be middle to end of January, but the finance committee would have to give a recommendation at that point. They could wait until February or March if they wanted
Right,
to.
exactly.
Right.
And the select board hasn't at this time agreed to put it on the ballot in March yet. That's a discussion they haven't had
I
yet.
think what we could do is we could recommend putting it on the ballot.
Exactly.
Okay.
Maybe if the finance committee's decision is that, then that satisfies, does that
Exactly.
satisfy all of us?
Because we're not, we between now and March, we will recommend whether to vote for it. But we recommend putting it on the ballot because there's certainly, I think, good evidence to suggest it ought to be done. There are questions that need to be answered. We can debate whether or not. In other words, between now and January 18th, I don't think we have a time through a public process to fully, well, anyway, everyone understands the conundrum.
I
Jonathan?
mean,
If you-
worst case scenario, there could be a special vote on that as well.
Well, that's not, I think we just, it's gonna be important in this that we sort of stay in our, yes, sorry, that you're not suggesting we take any action with respect to that. So,
John, can I say something? It's Roger.
yes, Roger, go ahead and then I'll.
I think it's becoming more and more clear to me that the prudent decision is to recommend purchasing the water company or at least put it on the ballot. That does raise another question of communicating with people, because everybody's, you know, are we going to get a new high school? Are we going to spend this much money on that? Are we going to do the town hall? So I think a lot of people are seeing potential sticker shock. So I think you need to come up with a really straightforward, simple set of answers that don't require people looking at Excel spreadsheets that nerds like me might like to do. So I would recommend looking for a very simple, straightforward, like one page. And I'll be happy to work with somebody on that if anybody wants to work on it. And just one other thing, and this may be more of a policy question that you don't feel that the Finance Committee should be addressing, but I strongly support looking very in looking at a more complicated or a more diversified rate structure, because there may be, I mean, my ears perked up when Charlie said, oh, maybe we could get we could have a low rate for a brew pub or something. And I think there are policy questions that might be moved by a different rate structure, as long as it doesn't add too much complexity to just managing the whole thing. Thanks.
Okay, Jill, and then I'd like to make a motion, actually. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Oh, okay. So now there are three decisions that I think are three
Yeah.
things that I think
Right.
the finance. One is to recommend that the item of purchasing the water company is put on the ballot. The second one is work on our recommendation of whether we should buy or not. And the third is to add anything we can to the rate structure discussion.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a motion that we vote, that we approve the placing of the purchase of the Aqueduct Company on the ballot. And that we commit to an analysis of, that we commit to an analysis of confirming the recommendation of the water group that it makes financial sense to purchase it between now and town meeting, and that we may decide in addition to provide the town in advance of town meeting with an analysis of the rates and the rate structures, which would be preliminary in any case because it's complicated. But for some people, there's some demand, Roger and Kareem included, but there's some other demand. We heard other people say this at the meetings as well. What the rate structure will be might influence their decision. So we will commit to analyzing the decision whether to buy, and we may, on the third question, we may come back with a model and further information on the rate structure.
So would you like that to all be one motion or three?
One motion. I'm proposing what we do, which is to we recommend putting it on the ballot. And along with that recommendation, we are committing to do one piece of work and possibly at a later time to decide. A second.
I'm happy to second that.
All right. Is there any further discussion of that?
Can I ask one question? So the Finance Committee is not giving a recommendation on whether the town should buy it or not
We're
today?
not doing that today.
Okay. So it's just a recommendation, just gonna be that it should be on the ballot.
Right, because we see no reason to not put it on the ballot, and we see ample evidence, not yet confirmed or voted on, that it is in fact something that we would want to consider, but.
The only thing I want to say, the select board has not agreed to put it on the ballot or not yet, so I just don't want the Finance Committee to get out ahead of themselves.
No,
If the select board tonight decides to.
No, we're making a recommendation to the select.
Okay,
They can
perfect.
ignore it. I mean, not ignore it, they will consider it. Sorry, never do that.
Well, I think get that in the minutes.
Sorry, I'm just nervous because Roger Celeste suggested taking away Excel spreadsheets from the finance committee. and I'm- No, so we would recommend tonight to the select board that they put it on the ballot. And obviously from this discussion, we'd be making clear that that is distinct. That is not an indication of whether or not we would recommend it. The acquisition.
So if it's on the ballot, it's yes, buy it or no.
Correct.
So if they vote no, is there any other further work that we need?
If there,
No, but the ballot doesn't happen till March, and what's implicit in.
You know what I'm saying?
What's
No.
implicit, what's implicit in the motion is that the work is done before March.
I actually don't know. I'm sure you're making a good point. I'm just not sure. Are you suggesting that we not,
If in March, the vote is no,
then the work that we have
then
done,
the work that we've done is essentially useless.
Yes.
Okay.
Not useless, but it will inform
It
it
your
will,
decision.
no, we may in
Okay.
fact recommend, it wouldn't be, I mean, particularly if the analysis shows we shouldn't buy it, it will be very helpful if you're opposed to buying it. You know, I mean, I'm not sure what if you're suggesting we not do the work because the vote might not go towards what we recommend, I think that.
May I object? I think it's precisely the opposite. In order to get a successful vote, we're going to have to answer the fundamental question is, how are we sharing the increase in cost? That will be very important for people. It's already important to everyone in this room.
Right.
And if we don't answer that, I think it's going to be negative.
That is a fundamental question.
Okay,
that
and that's-
People are gonna wanna know.
You
the
mean,
answer.
do
So will we have the answer to that?
Well, what I,
Or
right, since there are people on both sides of that issue today, my motion says that we may have the answer to that.
Okay,
but I want to fundamentally disagree with you.
I'm not,
Oh, but we,
I haven't said if I'm,
but.
You can, the only point.
This
I
about
want
the
to make-
motion?
No,
No.
yes. The only point to make is that you cannot have a vote in March that is uneducated. So you
Yes.
have to do the work before March.
right, and people want to know what they're voting.
However, you don't have to get as far as approving a rate structure because that's a separate decision.
Some,
I don't think it's a separate decision.
right, some people.
A lot of the
disagree.
people are
It
gonna
can
be
be
voting.
a later decision.
Some people.
I don't think so.
Okay,
What do you-
but the reason, sorry, hold on, I'm sorry, I have like,
All right.
I have a hard stop at, which is why I'm sort of rushing this along, but I actually think it's in our interest anyway. I think this question, there are people on both sides of this specific issue. Is it important to do the thing I said we may do? The third part, the third decision, does that need to be done by March or not? Charlie and Jill have said no, Ellen and I would say yes. Okay, we have 2 months to figure that out.
Okay, so I'm going to vote no to your motion then. So I'd like you to separate your motion into three.
Because you want to say we will commit. To do that.
Before we go on
To
to
say
rate
that we will recommend putting the ballot,
Right,
the motion
rec-
on the ballot. We will do some work before March. I will not vote for the fact that we have to decide a rate structure, because if we cannot reach agreement on a rate structure, and that stops us making a decision about buying the water company, the implications are huge
I-
and very, very important.
I did not say we will provide a recommendation on the rate structure. I said we may. If you want to prevent us from doing it, I'll separate the two up.
No, I'm happy with the may, but
Okay,
that
that's what-
might not make Ellen happy.
Well, right, but okay, but I put my motion on the table. So, and is there any further discussion on the motion? So everyone understand, we are committing to a recommendation, which is to put, first question, the answer to the first question is we recommend it. We are committing to do a body of work on whether to make the acquisition. And we are indicating that we will have, well, it's a practical matter, we will have a further discussion about whether or not to analyze the rate structure prior to that.
Okay.
May I
or
just-
not.
Could I get a clarification on the motion? The analysis as to whether we should purchase or not will also be followed by our recommendation at the finance committee as to whether we should purchase or not.
Our intent, I would say that we're going to do the work. I don't want to make a commitment that we will make a recommendation because it's conceivable. Like, for example, the town hall committee came to a point where they said they couldn't yet make a recommendation. But obviously, I would just like to leave the language as I said it, which is that we will do the work to be able to recommend whether or not. I just don't want to, yeah,
Okay.
I mean, The intent is
and-
to make a recommendation.
Got it. And then
Yeah.
the second clarification is the analysis on the rate structure can hopefully be done if the town owns it. Do we have a view of what that rate structure might be if a private company owns it, or are we jumping in the unknown at that point?
It's, we don't have a view, and more importantly, we have absolutely no control.
Right, so that's also very risky, and we need to put it out there.
Except the view that you do have is the current rate structure from a privately owned water company and what they're proposing. That's what you got.
Okay. All right, fine. Thanks for clarifying.
Okay, if there are no other questions, can we vote then on the motion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
3, 4, 5. Okay, and Tom is not here. Any opposed? No. Okay, so we've agreed on a path forward. Okay, we've agreed on a path forward. Okay. The second, for today, that's the water company discussion. The second item on the agenda is to discuss the other initiatives on the work plan. And I have run out of time, but we still have a quorum without me, and Mike, this is not running on my computer. So
I'm sorry, I personally rather we have more of us to discuss how the work would be allocated.
Yeah.
So I would be okay if it's okay with everyone to postpone that conversation. Partially because right now our focus is going to be on the analysis for the water company. Could we at least talk about when we're going to get back together to look at the water company work, if that works with everybody else?
Yeah, we can do that next week. The model, both of the models that would support a discussion of both of the two remaining issues, should we buy it, and what the pricing structure would be, has been built. And so if we want to pick this seems to be a good time, Monday at 12:30. Should we try to next Monday?
I can do a part of that meeting.
Okay,
Good for me.
all right.
It's fine for me.
Kareem, are you okay?
Checking.
Hey, John, may I just point out that the website has this meeting starting at 1, which is why I was late.
Okay, I'm really sorry. It used to be starting at 12, which was also incorrect, but at least it was early. Thank you.
I can do next Monday. I might be a little bit delayed because I'll be coming back from physical therapy.
Okay.
So, I mean, I could definitely do it if it's 1 o'clock. I'm going to be delayed if it's 12:30.
Monday, 1:15, 12:30. Okay, the problem is I have a standing thing at 2. So, but that's fine. We can, I think we'll,
Yeah,
we'll
you guys can start without me. It's fine.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, and I also can have a session beforehand for individual members of the finance committee, as long as we don't have a quorum, in which I show you the model and you can begin to do it. It's a little bit hard to use yourself, but so I'm happy to share it. And we will, by the way, post it publicly for people to use. Okay, good. So we have 28 seconds left. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, it's a miracle. Thank you all for being time sensitive, and I will see you next Monday. We've got, the models are very interesting. And,
It was
I think
actually a
it'll be
really
good
useful
discussion.
meeting.
Yeah.
Just to get
All
to
right,
the-
thanks all.
yeah, all right,
And
thanks, everybody.
that's where tonight should get to.
Well, and we'll make that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good structure
Yeah.
for the question, yeah. 3-part question. Could you